Hey, this is Matt once again. What about the other video? This is another paid request. This time for Adam. Thank you so much for that. And for those interested in requesting any type of videos, topics, reactions, commentaries, what have you, feel free to send it either directly to my PayPal or join my Patreon. Both links are down below in the info box. It could be review, commentary, re-review, topic, me trying out a video game, or whatever it may be. But Adam wanted me to talk about Whatever Happened to Baby Jane from 1962. Now, this is a film I had heard of, and I'd seen bits and pieces, and I just couldn't really get much of a handle on it. I knew of it because of the rivalry between the two stars, Bette Davis and Joan Crawford, where they were big stars from way, way back in the day, and they really hated each other, and by this point they were considered washed up, but then this kind of reinvigorated their careers for a bit. And Bette Davis was nominated for an Oscar, but Joan Crawford wasn't nominated for anything. And I believe Joan Crawford would, like, they're both labeled as terrible to work with and pain in the asses. And, like, Bette Davis seems like people thought she was crazy, and then Joan Crawford seems like she was any better, because I think Joan Crawford was the basis for Mommy Dearest. You know, with the movie No Wire Haters. And she was like the abusive mom. So it seemed like nobody was worth a shit. Now, the movie itself, it's 1962 film, is done in black and white. And there's 3 time periods. And I would say for the first 20-some or less minutes, we're in these other 2 time periods. One when these two are childhood, one when it's 20 years later, and then the third main part of the story is in the 1960s. So Bette Davis is Jane, or Baby Jane, a childhood star that dances for the crowd and sings, and people love her. And in fact, they're even selling Baby Jane dolls for sale, which I imagine all the creepy people that got them for other sick pervert reasons. But things were different back then, because no one thought of that stuff, I guess. And she's a very big old bitchy brat, but her dad kind of lets her do what she wants to do, so I blame the dad for that. While Blanche, who is the older sister, but she's very quiet and she's not popular, and the mom says, hey, don't worry, one day you'll be that way, and make sure you treat them well. Yeah, sure, I'll remember it, but she's also pissed off. You can't blame Blanche for being pissed off with the way the dad treats her, and the dad loves Baby Jane and pampers her and makes her into this brat. Then it cuts to 20 years later, only this time Blanche is very, very successful, and while she's being successful, she puts in her contract to let Baby Jane work in her movies, but directors are looking at her going, she's awful, her southern accent is awful. And then you have this very clunky directed scene with this car accident. I say very clunky with the way it's trying to hide who did what to be revealed later. But by hiding it, the whole scene just looked a bit clunky to me in terms of staging and the way it was filmed. And like I said, most of it takes place in the 1960s, where the little girl, brat Baby Jane, has grown up and is played by Bette Davis, and she's an alcoholic and she's very bitchy. While Blanche, played by Joan Crawford, she's living off the money of her success in films years ago, and she's in a wheelchair. So Bette Davis is supposed to take care of Joan Crawford in the wheelchair, but she's treating Joan Crawford like shit. There is a housekeeper that's trying to keep the peace, who comes by from time to time. You find out Blanche wants to sell the house, but Baby Jane don't like that. Just shitty, making Blanche more paranoid on what she's eating. Because at one point, Blanche opens a tray and it's her pet bird as part of the dinner. And then at one point the food's normal. Then at one point there's a rat in it. And at one point it's normal. Just making Blanche paranoid on what to eat and not to eat. Fucking with her food. Being bitchy at Blanche. Kicking the housekeeper out. Locking Blanche in her room. Baby Jane has this idea that she's going to have a resurgence. Hires this piano guy to help with her potential shows. And things get more topsy-turvy as it goes on. Now, I would say between the two performances, I actually like Joan Crawford more as a performance than Bette Davis. Bette Davis is definitely much more of the show-off, stagey type of performance, bigger, and maybe that's why she got the Oscar nomination. I don't know, just Joan Crawford, her being paranoid, her being terrified, scenes of her trying to crawl to this telephone to try to get help. And if this film was ever trying to make me feel for Bette Davis and feel for Baby Jane, it failed, because I not one time ever felt sorry for her. And whether that was on purpose or that was because of a fuck-up on their part, just this film was there. I didn't hate it, but I did not love it. I would never see the film again. It is fairly campy in some of the acting. I thought Misery did this type of thing a lot better with Kathy Bates and James Caan. I saw this movie, granted it came out later than this, and Misery and Kathy Bates and James Caan, I just thought it was much better. Kathy Bates, I thought, was less campy and more intense, like more satisfying performance. But the story just felt a bit tighter. Even though that's not like a short film, but this one's 2 hours and 13 minutes, and this is a time when credits were 3 or 5 seconds long. And this film did not need to be 2 hours and 13 fucking minutes. It's way over long. Now, it's well shot at times. There's a bit where Joan Crawford's locked in her room and she's in a wheelchair spinning and the camera's up top. And we see, imagine the camera's on the ceiling and this is the wheelchair and you see it going in a circle. She just doesn't know where to go because she can't go anywhere. Some of the lighting, like when Bette Davis is hovering over Joan Crawford, there's a certain bit of menace in there. Humor, I know people label this like black humor comedy. The only bits that were kind of funny is some of the stuff the piano guy would say. Like when he comes over and I don't know if he was being like sarcastic or some of his snide remarks like goes over Baby Jane's head. Or whatever it is, or the way that the piano guy tossed to his like his mother. They do his mother. Was his wife or his mother? I think it was his mother. If it was his wife, man, old bitch. But I think it was his mother. You don't know, because the movie's already leaving my brain. I mean, also the makeup on Bette Davis, like, is this supposed to be so big and broad, like look like a monster movie? Like she's two shades away from the Mummy? The Mummy? Mummy for feminists. It just seemed a bit big and broad with the makeup. But I guess maybe that was the purpose. And there's some stuff you just see coming a mile away. Spoiler alert. Like there's a bit where the housekeeper comes by and she could clearly tell this Bette Davis is off her fucking rocker. She hasn't taken her fucking Kit Kats yet that she needs. She needs to be sedated, but she has a hammer and she puts the fucking hammer down, turns her back on Bette Davis. I'm like, number one, that's stupid. Like, to not watch her, to put the fucking hammer down. And once you know that, you know what's happening. And, of course, Bette Davis kills the housekeeper with the hammer. Not violent, because it's 1962. I mean, it's still letting your mind fill in what happens. And then that good chunk of it, Joan Crawford's just there to be tied up and or dragged around, or knocked out, or much. The piano guy, Edwin, I believe his name, Edwin, he gets drunk, comes in, finds out, runs off. And then they go to a beach. Baby Jane takes Blanche to a beach. And Blanche tells that, well, really, super spoilers, you didn't really hit me with the car. I was trying to hit you. And this whole thing kind of was a bit iffy with me for a number of reasons. Because she says, how do I put it? You made me look bad at a party, so then I tried to kill you, but somehow I missed or swerved or something, and then somehow I got myself paralyzed, and then somehow I crawled myself through the windshield, and somehow made it look like you did it, and then Baby Jane didn't remember anything, and then she just accepted it. And part of me is like, was she telling the truth? Like, is Blanche telling the truth? Or is she just saying it to a bit somehow final fuck you to Baby Jane? In some way, like, what you did, what you were thinking for the whole time was all bullshit. I mean, but it wasn't bullshit, or is she doing that to ease? She sees how far gone Baby Jane is, so she's gonna lie and say it was my fault, even though it isn't, just to make Baby Jane happy. Just for all I know, that's the case. That she's gonna lie and say, no, it wasn't your fault, it was my fault. I did this, this, and this, just to make you feel better and maybe be less crazy. So a part of me is like, I don't even know if Blanche is telling the truth, and I don't even get really a big answer. I think people just assume that she's telling the truth, but I don't know. I have doubts on it. Because, like, the story is just, number one, in that second time period when Blanche is very successful, we're not there long. And it doesn't show much of that time period. It just shows a couple people in the theater looking at Baby Jane giving, in their eyes, a shitty performance in a movie, then walk in the studio, and then cut to that weird, awkward-looking crash, and then credits. So you don't get a sense of Blanche in her heyday, or how Blanche and Baby Jane reacted to each other during their heyday. You don't get, I guess because Bette Davis, Joan Crawford were so old, they couldn't, I don't know, what you don't do with makeup, and it's not like nowadays where they would just do digital face replacement, de-aging, all that stuff. But it's like you don't really get a sense, don't get a whole lot of chance of showcasing what kind of characters they were in Blanche's heyday. This whole party Blanche speaks of, you never see that party, so you don't know how that all worked out. Like, what did Baby Jane really do to embarrass her? If the car's here and the gate's here, how is it that you just go like this, and all of a sudden it's a crash so bad that you're paralyzed? And then if you're paralyzed from the waist down, how the hell do you have that much strength to go through the windshield? And yeah, I'm fucked up. And somehow, even though you're paralyzed, you stage this whole thing to make it look like Baby Jane. And thank God, Baby Jane. And then you think of the idea of faking it, and thank God Baby Jane accepted it, or learned to accept it, or eventually learned to accept it. I don't know. And even at the end, you don't even get the satisfaction of, is Blanche alive? Is she dead? Because the cops find Bette Davis, and she's dancing one more time in her performance to the crowd, similar to the beginning of the film, where she was a kid. Here she's an adult, and it's a very sad state of affairs. The cops see Joan Crawford on a beach, but the camera pulls away, and they get to her, and I don't know, because 2 minutes before, Joan Crawford mentions how she's dying. But does she die? What happens afterward? Do they both get arrested because, oh, Blanche really did do this and she's fucked up, but then Bette Davis... You never find out anything. I mean, that's kind of like if the end of Psycho was maybe somewhat. Okay, imagine the end of Psycho being the guy grabbing Norman Bates and the hair, fake hair comes off, cuts away, the end. And I'm like, wait a minute. Some may say that was the right, that's how it should have ended, but I don't know, just, it's not a bad film. The lighting, some of the camera shots and placements, some of the acting by Joan Crawford. Bette Davis is not bad, although at times is a little bit camping it up. I like the piano guy, Edwin. I wish he was a bit more in the film. But man, 2 hours and 13 minutes, I think it's a bit overlong. Like I said, it would have been nice to have maybe a bit of showcasing to feel a little bit of sympathy for Bette Davis's character. Like, even Misery, while I don't feel bad for Kathy Bates' character, at least the beginning, they make her seem like a sweet lady, and she's innocent, and that she is a really big fan. And there's like little moments of sometimes she loads the gun and unloads it, and you get a little bit of her psyche and that nature. You say maybe the same thing happened with Baby, but I never felt sorry for her. I never felt pity for Baby Jane. And there's certain elements, like, they seem to build up this neighbor that they have. This neighbor, this lady who Baby Jane gives snide remarks. And there's a bit where the mom is talking to her daughter about how nasty Baby Jane is. And you think it's going to lead to something, like the neighbor's going to find out what's going on, or she's going to be another victim, or she finds out and she calls the cops. Nothing really leads to that neighbor of anything. Or maybe the neighbor's going to try to help Joan Crawford. No, nothing with that neighbor. The ladies really, it led to not much of anything. So, I'm glad hey, saw it once all the way through with more fresh eyes. With the acting and the way it was shot and the way it was lit, the cinematography, nicely made for what it is. It's just, again, the pacing, some of the story bits, some things that seem like didn't lead anywhere, or some things that maybe I wanted a little bit of a tighter bow at the end and others don't. I think Joan Crawford, I got more out of her performance, and I felt sorry for her more so than Bette Davis. Like, Bette Davis is more showy, but I thought Joan Crawford was better, I did performance-wise. So it is what it is. I just didn't hate it, didn't love it. I would never see it again. But it is what it is. Like I said, I would rather go rewatch Misery. That's the film I kept thinking of as I was watching this. That's just me, though. So that said, thanks for watching. Take care. We'll see you guys later. Bye-bye.